Good afternoon, warriors, and welcome to another episode of the Mental Health Movement Podcast, Voice for the Voiceless. I'm your host, Chris. And before we get on today's topic, I just want to give a special shout out to all my guests that I've had on the podcast in the last couple months or last month or so. And then, of course, Sean, whose podcast that I was just on. When this podcast comes out, it will be June 28th. So hopefully this recent podcast with Sean, has gone to where it needs to go to, and you people feel inspired in some way. I am more than blessed to do this podcast, and I'm even more grateful for everybody's support. Between the shares, the feedback that everybody gives me, even my therapist, she listens as well. And she always gives me great feedback and always bounces off ideas for me in our sessions, of course, when we talk about what we need to talk about. And, everything is moving the way that it needs to go. I feel like I'm on the right path to where I need to be. That being said, before we get to the weekend, of course, it's Father's Day. So for all the fathers that happen to be listening to this podcast, I'm wishing you a happy Father's Day. And of course, our fathers that have been lost up in heaven, my brother Santi was a father, of course, we want to say happy Father's Day to those who have fallen. Without our fathers, there's a lot of lessons that we probably wouldn't learn in life. And then there's some people whose mom was their father, of course, not in the literal sense, but in the mental sense of she had to play both parts in raising you and teach you the lessons that her father may or may not have taught her. So, thank you to all the moms who have stepped up in that father's place. And of course, always a thank you to the fathers who serve in the military, who have passed away, and who are still with us on this earth. So again, a very happy Father's Day to all of you. I just had dinner with my father. It's very nice. Had a couple laughs. But today's topic, we're going to be talking about PTSD. It's a pretty heavy topic. I was treading a little carefully on what I wanted to cover next, and I felt like this was the most appropriate topic to cover next because when this podcast comes out, it will already pass, but basically my mom is flying in this weekend. Not to get into too much information about the situation, but long story short, my healing journey started because of my relationship with my mother. There's a little phrase that I read a long time ago that still holds pretty true to my heart. My mom was the first woman to break my heart, and as much as it hurts saying, I feel like a lot of people who do listen to this episode need to hear that because we try to hold our parents at such a high pedestal, right? We try to make them bigger than they actually are, their part in our life, if you will. And a lot of us go through childhood trauma. A lot of us go through some sort of trauma in life. And I understand now that I'm almost 30 years old. I've probably heard the word trauma my entire life and never really truly understood what trauma was. I never understood what PTSD was. When I was younger, PTSD is like, okay, it was a veteran who went through the war and, has a hard time readjusting to citizen life. That's what I thought PTSD was. It wasn't until about yesterday that made me aware that I have a sense of PTSD, not like there's a big T and a little t, as my therapist put it. Big T is something like sexual violence or physical abuse or witnessing a death or being part of a death or something along those lines. And then of course you have the little t, which is basically when you experience verbal abuse, when you have that childhood trauma. And I think I fall in the category under the little t of the PTSD category because there is so much that I have gone through as a young man and as a child that most people my age now should never have, you know, have had to go through. And of course, I'm not saying that my trauma is any more valid than anybody else's, because I feel like everybody's feelings, everybody's traumas, everybody's journey to get where we're at right now absolutely matters. I'm just saying trauma has molded me into the person that I am. It has made me realize so much about my own family, so much about my siblings, so much about my parents. And you come to a point in your life where you either break that cycle and you try to heal from that pain, which I'll get into later on in this podcast, or you can let that label define who you are for the rest of your life and pass it on for generations and generations. Now, what is PTSD? So, by definition, it's post-traumatic stress disorder. Basically, it's heavy on triggers. For those of you who are aware of triggers, it's basically something you get like a flashback. You have nightmares about something that you experience, whether it's victims who have gone through trafficking, or people who have been abused by their parents or a family member, or, in my case, seeing a coffin, seeing a casket close. And that's traumatic to me. I have been to quite a few funerals and 2 open casket funerals, and both of which were very traumatic because those images will play back in your mind over and over. So, PTSD, I feel like kind of gets thrown around a little bit, and I don't like to self-diagnose myself. I don't like to throw a label on myself unless I have facts behind it. And when I spoke to my therapist last night, basically we talked about what I was just saying. I don't like to self-diagnose because I'm not a professional. I am a mental health advocate, and I try to research as much as I can about everything that I feel like I might be struggling through, and then I'll go to my therapist, who is a professional, and try to verify if that's what I'm experiencing or not. And that brings me back to the little T, big T. I fall under little T because it's little T is more personal opposed to the big T, where it's like heavy traumatic events. That's where most veterans would fall under, is the big T. So the symptoms of PTSD are flashbacks and nightmares, like I was saying, severe anxiety, and then uncontrollable thoughts. I feel like the flashbacks and nightmares go hand in hand with each other. Of course, nightmares, everybody has had nightmares since we were kids, but there aren't too many people who can properly assess their nightmares and why they're happening. I remember the day after my brother's passing, the day after his funeral, the sound of the casket closing was very traumatic to me. And for those listeners, I know at the very beginning of every podcast I had that trigger warning there, but just be aware that this podcast might get a little heavy. So if you need to take a break, put the podcast on pause, and when you're ready, go ahead and resume. I just feel like if I don't put any personal things into these podcasts, then it's just kind of like I'm reading out of a book, and I know people aren't looking for that when they're listening to a podcast. They want to hear personal experiences. They want to hear, oh, this person's going through that. I've been through that too. How do I improve, or how do I grow from this? If he's grown from it, I want to be like that person. And if I can use my experiences with nightmares to help anybody else, or just to show people that they're not alone, that's the goal. That's the goal at the end of the day, is to ensure that we're there for each other, that we're validating each other's feelings and reminding each other that we're not alone. The flashbacks, I feel like, usually happen probably when you go to like a location that you used to spend with that person, or situation that happened a lot. There were certain conversations that you'd have with people that remind you of that person. The severe anxiety, I feel like if you have mental health struggles, just in general, I feel like that PTSD just kind of adds on to that anxiety. So, I feel like the flashbacks and the anxiety kind of happen hand in hand. It's like you're thinking of a conversation you have with somebody when you're just sitting on the couch, and oh shit, we just talked about this the week before he passed away or she passed away, and then you start breathing really heavy and you don't know what to do because you just can't stop thinking about it, which goes into the uncontrollable thoughts. A lot of people that I know are very, I don't want to say dismissive, because I know some of them try to help, but so many people will just say, oh, don't think about it or distract yourself or this or that. And a lot of people who don't experience PTSD or any kind of trauma in their life don't understand that it's not a switch that we can just shut off. If I can go to sleep at night and not think of or not hear that sound in the back of my mind or whatever, I would do it. I would shut it off in a heartbeat and I'd probably get like 10 hours of sleep. But it just, you have good days and you have bad days. Everybody has those. And, that's a fact. But PTSD is not something that you can just shut off. It's something that time does heal PTSD. It absolutely does. But you have to be willing to put in the necessary steps to heal that PTSD, or else, like I said, you're going to continue that cycle. You're going to continue throwing that label in the back of your head. It's like, oh, well, I have PTSD, so I can't do X and I can't do Y. And the more you convince yourself that you can't do something, the more you're never going to do that. Like for me, I feel like the best way to approach triggers is to slowly move yourself into it. There were certain things I couldn't talk about with people because they're reminding me of that person, or going to see a sunset for when Amy passed away was really hard for me, and it took me probably about a month before I actually got out of my house to look at a sunset again. And so many people don't seem to understand just how much goes into healing from PTSD or healing from any kind of trauma for that matter. I am fortunate enough to not have experienced the severe PTSD part. And I don't think anybody's trauma is more than somebody else's, but there is severe trauma and then there's childhood trauma, which it is severe in a sense. When you're verbally abused your whole life, or you're just constantly bullied or something, that the trauma always equates. It does say big T, little t, but I feel like they go hand in hand with each other in terms of validating somebody's feelings. I'm not going to say what I went through was the same as this person. Just like I said in the podcast with Sean, we all heal differently. We all experience situations differently from each other. And when you can come to terms with, I went through this and it's okay that I'm feeling this way. When you start being patient with yourself and allow yourself to heal, and that's what so many people don't do, man. You don't allow yourself to heal because you want to constantly, I don't want to say harp is not the right word. You sit on that label of PTSD and you're not sure how to get out of feeling that way, because that label is like a black cloud over your head, and that black cloud just doesn't go away. And I think that anybody who has experienced any kind of trauma in their life, whether it's been abuse, whether it's been you lost a pet that was really close to you, that's a trauma. Seeing anything lose their life in front of you or whatever is a trauma. And when you allow yourself to heal from those traumatic events, you can completely spin that pain to helping somebody. And I'll get a little more into that a little further in this podcast, but don't let what you're struggling with define you. Don't let how your parents treated you define who you are as a person, man or woman. It doesn't matter your creed. It doesn't matter, your gender. It doesn't matter at all. Trauma doesn't discriminate. Mental health does not discriminate against anybody. And when you can come to terms with yourself, and you can be at peace with who you are and what you want in your life. Chase what you want. uh Work for everything that you want, guys, and everything will come. Everything will follow suit. Just find that peace and be patient with yourselves, because Lord knows I'm I'm not a very patient person with myself, and it's really hard to find that patience. But once you find it, everything seems to come naturally right behind it. So for trauma, it's grouped into or PTSD rather, it's grouped into four different types. You have intrusive memories, you have avoidance, you have negative changes in your thinking and feel and mood, and of course you have the physical and emotional reactions to that trauma. Now the intrusive memories, again, flashback, and nightmares of specific set events. I feel the best way to deal with those flashbacks is to, you know I don't want to say distract, is to go to that place that they loved to be at, that you guys love to visit together, or a park that you watched somebody that you cared about pass away, or just a death in general. If something hurts you that much to where you feel like you are avoiding that place, and again, avoidance, it's a thing, guys. That's basically triggers. The only way to heal from your triggers is to slowly welcome those triggers and turn it into something that you can write about. Bring a journal with you when you are going to those specific places. Write down that event. That way it's not sitting in the back of your head, because when you write things on a piece of paper, guys, I'm telling you right now, it doesn't help everybody, but it helps so many people get those thoughts out of their head, that you could just close a book, and yeah, you might think about it here and there, but you can open that journal, or you can open up that notepad again, and write positive thoughts right below. It's like, I watched my grandfather pass away in front of me, but we always used to love doing this together, and I'm happy he's not suffering anymore. I'm just grateful for all the times that we had together. Everybody heals differently, but I feel like, in a sense, there's always the common denominator when it comes to healing. We all cling to something, right? For me, it's music. Music helps me heal tremendously. Before I found mental health resources, music was something that I leaned on for a very long time, and it helped me so much get through what I needed to get through. So the negative changes in thinking and mood is really, really, really big. That comes with hopelessness. That comes with self-doubt. You don't have any more close relationships with people. I feel like that's a lot of people who deal with that PTSD. I know for me, like I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, my mom and I's relationship is very complicated. I keep her a little further than arm's length and keep conversations very short and simple with her, because it helps me keep a peaceful relationship with her, if you will, and it helps me keep peace at myself, with myself, that I accept that my relationship with her probably will never get better. Same with my father. My relationship with him will probably never get better. And when you can come to terms with specific things that you were put through by whoever, if you want that person in your life still, and you're not sure how that they can be there, keep them a little further than arm's length. Especially family members, guys. Family members are probably the biggest problem with a lot of people and their mental health is parents or extended family, aunt and uncle, whatever it is. I don't have a good relationship with probably 95% of my family. And that's just due to the things I had to endure as a child, endure as a young man. And up until now, I feel like I have enough emotional intelligence where I can draw that boundary with people and not have to not have to worry about if this person is going to set me off or if this person is going to upset me. I can walk away from situations and not feel any remorse for doing so, because when you start respecting your own boundaries and you let them be known that you have boundaries with said person, those close relationships, they might not be as close as they once were, but if you truly want that person in your life, keep them a little further than arm's length. Just hi, how are you? You don't have to talk about anything you don't want to. I try to tell that to everybody who does end up chasing therapy. You don't have to tell them everything that's going on in your life. It's like, hi, how are you? How's your day? And that's really it. The self-doubt thing, I think, is something really big for a lot of people. Just for the simple fact that the self-doubt is, you're not going to accomplish something in your life because of that PTSD is preventing you from getting that promotion at work, or applying for that job because you had a bad experience with a manager in another place. Things do follow us when we're growing into adults. I always feel like if you put out good energy follows you. But if there was ever any point that you didn't put good energy out there, it follows you in some way or another. I'm a firm believer in karma, and I feel like when somebody is bullied, that self-doubt follows them for so long. And again, that's a form of trauma, is being bullied. I was definitely bullied as a kid, and I used a lot of that pain and a lot of that suffering and into helping people, into starting this podcast and the mental health group and stuff. And self-doubt is something that I've struggled with probably my whole life. There's days that I don't feel like I'm doing enough for people, and then I'm reminded how much I do for people. And it's hard to reassure yourself that you're doing what you need to do in life, that things are going to come back to you in tenfold. And I know self-doubt is something that so many of us struggle with and so many of us don't talk about, because you want to be happy, but most people don't know what happy means. Happy to a lot of people in society is money and cars and a big house and everything, and all that's great on paper, guys, but what is happiness to you? What is true happiness? If you feel like money is going to make you happy, hey, it might make your life a little bit easier. I'm sure money would make my life a lot easier, but I don't think it'll make me happy. Especially in today's economy. Money does not last in today's world anymore. And I feel like it doesn't matter how much money you have right now, it's at some point you're going to be humbled in your life. And some of us were humbled a lot sooner than others. I probably was made humble when I was like 14 years old, when I had my first traumatic experience that I'm aware, that I can be self-aware that happened. And I had traumatic events when I was growing up that I still remember from when I was 4. That self-doubt follows you for the rest of your life if you let it. It doesn't have to be there. For the hopelessness, I feel like it goes with self-doubt. A lot of people feel like when they go through a traumatic event, whether it's a bad relationship or whatever you're going through, you feel like you're never going to find love again, or you feel like you're never going to have any friends because of what one friend did to you. And it's a revolving door, right? It's one of those things that you try to convince yourself that it's not true, but then it's, you're going back and forth. It's like that seesaw that just doesn't stop. And life is all about balance, right? It's all about, if you're having a really bad day, you can go and sleep. You can rest for the rest of the day and do whatever you need to do the next day. But if you're having a really bad day and you don't have the ability to rest, try to give yourself those affirmations. Try to reassure yourself. It's like, hey, I'm having a bad day, but this is going the way that I need it to go. So maybe it's not all bad. I feel like when some people are having a really bad day, like myself, I know I'm guilty of it. I'm sure there's many others, that you find little pieces of the day that just, okay, I'm stacking on top of each other, and this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, and you don't stop. For me, if I put on music for like an hour or two, put on my headphones and just do my work or whatever I'm doing, um, again, that's a distraction. Distractions can only last for so long, but when you start uh, giving yourself the what's the word I'm looking for? When you start to reassure yourself that everything's going to be okay and you are better than your thoughts. And I have a little piece of paper here right next to my desk. You are better than your thoughts. And I will forever stand by these words because it's true, guys. Everything that our anxiety tells us, everything that our trauma has showed us does not define us. That if you're trying to lose weight and you look in the mirror, it's like, oh my God, I look terrible. uh Try to be like, I'm doing the best that I can. When you can admit to yourself that you're doing what you're supposed to do and you're doing the best to your ability of doing that specific task that you're doing, your mind will stop attacking you. Stop letting it put you down, because once you get into that cycle, it just doesn't stop. You find something wrong in your day, and then that becomes a part of something else that's going wrong in your day, and then you come home angry, you come home mentally exhausted. And again, it's okay to take a rest. It's okay to find that checkpoint and just lay down and save the game, right? um, and I just, for me, I have a hard time with certain things that I know I need to work on. And I try to reassure myself that it's okay to feel this way. It's okay that I'm feeling like this and I'm sad today, and that's okay too. You don't have to be happy all the time, regardless of what people say to you. Debbie Downer, like I said with Sean, is probably one of the most annoying phrases in the entire world that I've heard my entire life. You're not allowed to be sad because when you're sad, it makes you look bad, blah, 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 blah. But fast forward to 2022, where people can get on a podcast like myself and say it's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel the way you're feeling. You're not alone, and you don't have to be alone either. And I wish that we could have started this 10, 15 years ago. I would have probably never had to go through what I went through, because I've always felt like something was wrong with me. And I'm sure so many people can relate to that statement. Nothing is wrong with you. You're just going through a trial that you're trying to get past. You're struggling with something you're not sure how to heal from. But healing is possible, guys. Getting better is possible. I've seen people in the absolute rock bottom, in the darkest of tunnels, crawl their way out of that tunnel. And when you crawl out of that tunnel, sure, the light may take forever to finally shine itself. But when you get to that light, guys, this journey is so worth it. I think everybody's life matters so very much. I think we all matter. And in a sense of, we need to reach out our hand to people that we know are struggling, or we see people struggle, whether that's an addict, whether that's a family member going through rough times, whether that's, somebody that unfortunately got locked away for their mistakes. Just because they make a mistake doesn't make them 100% an awful person. Sure, there are criminals, absolutely. And those people are locked away for doing what they did. But then there's people who make mistakes like DUIs. There's people that make mistakes, getting into an argument with somebody and something goes wrong. If you have any kind of record, it doesn't make you a bad person. You just messed up. Now, again, this doesn't apply to the people who have done truly evil and wrong things. I'm just speaking in general terms. we all go through something in our life that, help people on your way up, because those are the same people that might help you when you're on your way down. Because again, life is all about those elevators, that seesaw. It's all about balance. If you help people when you're up and they're down, it could change tomorrow. You don't ever think something can't happen to you, because it absolutely can. Um, Now, for the physical part, this is something that I can relate to, probably to an absolute T, word for word. Self-destructive. Being a self-destructive person is something that I can honestly say, when Santiago passed away, I started becoming addicted to being self-destructive, eating bad, just sitting on the couch for hours at a time and not doing anything. Constantly negative self-talk, and it was a really bad habit that I was finally able to break and get myself out of the house and create a healthy routine. um, Life is all about finding that routine. If you can find a routine, whether it's once or twice a week, whether it's 20 minutes out of your day, create that little routine for yourself to I'm going to take a walk today for 20 minutes. And you don't have to walk a marathon. You don't have to ride 100 miles, and people will be disappointed in you, as long as you try to get better. As long as you put in the work to get better, you can absolutely get better. It took me a long time to break out of that habit, but it is 100% possible. you know um, it's something that I feel isn't addressed enough, but it's something that's kind of quietly making its ugly head known, as people being self-destructive. I have a friend who just got out of a long relationship, and he records on his social media feeds driving really fast, and he's always drinking, and he's depressed. And again, your feelings are valid and your struggles are valid, but once you get into that self-destructive behavior, it's so hard to break out. But again, this goes with positive self-talk. Tell yourself that you're enough to feel like you felt 6 months ago, to feel like you felt 3 months ago again. It's absolutely possible to heal from absolutely everything in some way or another. We're never 100%, right? I know for a fact I can never be 100%, because there's always that what if. That what if is depression. Depression is always that what if. You can be the happiest person in the world, wake up tomorrow, you don't want to get out of bed. Depression is not a switch. Depression is whenever it wants to show up, it'll show up. And yeah, it might possibly ruin your day, but again, positive self-talk is probably one of the most important parts of self-care. And then you got startled and easily frightened. So when I was researching this topic, just to kind of get some talking points, that one really stuck out to me, because growing up, I don't want to say I was abused, because I wasn't. I was hit with a lot of things. That goes from a bedpost to a shoe, whatever it was, and I would always flinch and never realize why I flinched. And again, PTSD. I always, I can't joke around and somebody like pretend to hit me. Like, I would genuinely startle or like tense up, because that was just something I did growing up. It was something part of my childhood and something part of my young adulthood as well. And again, I don't want to say I was abused, but there was enough to almost say I was. There was mental abuse, there was verbal abuse, absolutely. But I being the firstborn got a lot of the rough end of the sword. There was a lot of things that I experienced that I can openly talk about now, and share my story with you guys and be okay with sharing it. Trouble sleeping is something that obviously insomnia, depression kind of all blends together. I feel like that kind of goes back into the intrusive memories. I was having night terrors forever when Santi passed away. I couldn't shut my eyes. I would constantly hear that sound that I mentioned, and I couldn't sleep for probably like 2 weeks. And I was finally able to sleep 5 hours one night, and I felt a little bit better, and I could finally start building up my sleep schedule again. But that's something that physically takes a toll on you, is not sleeping. Um, I've tried every sleep remedy there is. Nothing has ever helped me. So you get like a CBD pen that kind of helps me sometimes. But trouble sleeping is, my anxiety prevents me from sleeping. Flashbacks, whatever it is, and that's something that a lot of people with PTSD, I'm sure, struggles with. Is you're stuck wide awake and you can't sleep and you can't figure out why. I had the lights off, TV off, everything, and I was just constantly uh, you know just not being able to sleep and seeing things with my eyes wide open, and waking up in the middle of the night because I thought I saw something, or I felt something brush my hand. And uh, that trauma, it sticks around a long time. um, I think the time heals all wounds thing kind of comes off as dismissive sometimes, but with PTSD, I feel like it's something that it may take years, it may take months, but I know it's something you can lighten the load on yourself. Self care is something I will forever preach in every podcast. I will constantly throw those two words at everybody until I'm blue in the face. Self care is the most important part of healing. Self care, positive self talk, getting the proper amount of sleep. Your diet does matter. There's so many things that we can do better for ourselves that I know so many of us struggle with. Um, and then so the causes for PTSD, of course, you have the verbal and emotional abuse, like I mentioned. Bullying is another big one. Mental health history, so with your family, kind of goes back to my point earlier with breaking that cycle in your family. A lot of our parents, me being 29, my parents are almost 50 now. um, they didn't know how to raise kids without projecting the things that they struggle with, because they didn't have mental health resources, not like we did anyway. I felt like our parents' generation was frowned upon if they looked for help. If, oh, well, you have depression, you're gonna get locked up because you feel this way. Oh, you're feeling suicidal. Okay, we're gonna Baker Act you and put you in a padded wall room, and we're just gonna watch you or not do anything and just shove pills down your throat. Um, Now you can find mental health resources nearly everywhere for almost everything that you're struggling with. I worked with the crisis text line for a little bit and had to take a break for myself because it is a lot, but there are resources for everything that people are struggling with. And something that I feel is important to remember when you're having kids is to tell them that it's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel how they're feeling, and that you're their safe place. A lot of parents don't do that, and it's heartbreaking to see parents, spew their hate for their baby daddy or their baby mommy onto their kid, and not showing those kids that, hey, this behavior isn't okay. You're not a tug of war toy. Not to get extremely personal, but that was me. I 8 years old when my parents got divorced, old enough to remember every fight, every time a cop was involved in our life, over 20 homes that I've lived in and multiple schools and etc. We were the tug of war toys for our parents, and your mom did this, your dad said this, and again, a cycle that wouldn't stop until I finally said it was enough. And I finally started speaking up for myself because I didn't want it to hurt my soul anymore. Um, 3-4 years ago, I probably wouldn't be able to just get on a podcast and talk about it casually. But today I can honestly say that I'm okay sharing this with people, because I genuinely hope that anything that I share on these podcasts help people. And I feel this specific subject for me was something that I wanted to do. I just didn't know when. So this was the perfect time to share my story a little bit more with you guys, and uh, share that you guys are not the only ones that struggle. You're not alone. My hand is there in the darkness. You just reach out if you need me, and that's the mentality I want to keep. Don't ever think that something can't happen to you, because it can. Um, we all go through trials in life, and we all go through struggles. It's all a matter of when. And that may sound cynical to some, but life doesn't hold back on anybody. It doesn't matter how rich you are. It doesn't matter what your job title is. It doesn't matter really anything. So luckily there's so many treatment options for people. There's different kinds of therapy, and that is there's cognitive therapy, there is exposure therapy, and then there's psychotherapy. Psychotherapy basically helps you recognize the ways that you're thinking, your cognitive patterns, and they try to bring that self-awareness into your being, and try to, okay, instead of thinking this way, how about you think of it this way? And that's the kind of therapy that I have, is a psychotherapy, because again, my trauma falls under that little t, where it's manageable. Not to say that big T isn't manageable, but big T, there's usually more intense therapy. Like there's the exposure therapy, and then there's the eye movement desensitization reprocessing, which basically they use the guided eye movements and try to change how you react to certain traumas. So, for instance, if you witness the death in front of you, heaven forbid, and you don't know how you're going to recover because you constantly see that image in your mind, they use the exposure therapy, which puts you in that situation again. It puts you where you were again and try to get you to react differently. It's like, oh, this happened, how am I going to heal? And they change it to, okay, this happened, and they're not suffering in pain, they're not disabled, they're not paralyzed. Maybe that's the kind of thinking they want you to have, is instead of this happened, it's, I'm grateful to have had the memories with them. I'm grateful that they were part of my life, and I'm even more grateful that they don't have to suffer in pain for the rest of their life. Death is something that I take very seriously, as does the rest of the world, and it's something that everybody heals differently from. But I also feel like it's something that we don't all heal the same from. Don't ever let somebody tell you that you can't grieve for a year and a half. You can't grieve for 6 months. There is no time limit on how long it takes to grieve. Death is something that very serious, obviously, because you're losing somebody's life. But there's so many options for treatments. Especially that EMDR is an incredible form of therapy. I've watched a couple videos on how it works. I don't know if everybody would benefit from it. I've never had to do it, thankfully, but it's one of those things for somebody who had to experience something severe that falls under that big T, that would probably have to expose themselves to. And then, of course, there's medications. I've spoken on here before about medications. I am against medications because I've seen what it does to people. There are some people in this world that absolutely need it, that the chemicals in their brain just can't function without whatever that pill or whatever it is gives them. It helps them function. I don't like how some people in the mental health field, that's their go-to, instead of trying to see if they can help. It's like, okay, you write down a couple words. Oh, well, they said suicidal, they said anxiety, they said this, they said that. Okay, here's a prescription, goodbye. I am so against that way of mental health help, because there are so many people who can heal from what they go through and are so discouraged from asking for help because the threats of getting locked away, the threats of being Baker acted or being fed medication for the rest of your life. I had a bad experience with a therapist, and it happens uh, to nearly everybody who looks for help. She didn't write anything down. Both of my sessions with her, in the second session, she asked what I thought about taking pills, because I was in a really bad way when I saw her, and I told him, like, I'm pretty against pills. I just want somebody to talk to and tell me how I can think differently. The uh, cognitive therapy, and cognitive. I keep mispronouncing that word. And she basically wasn't having it. So I know that people who seek therapy struggle finding one, either A, because of costs, or B, because you're tired of hitting that reset button. And you know the help is out there if you want the help. There are resources, ways to um there are ways to get yourself better. If you're diagnosed with PTSD, it's I'm not going to say it's not the end of the world, because that just sounds so dismissive, but it doesn't have to define who you are as a person. It doesn't have to define the journey that you walk into healing. There's so many possibilities in this world, and especially when it comes to healing, that when we start putting ourselves first and being patient with ourselves and loving ourselves, that's super important, guys. We don't love ourselves enough. We don't put ourselves first enough, and that is, I feel like, should be number one for healing, is loving yourself. So the very last thing that I wanted to cover was something that Jessica, my therapist, brought up to me last night. It's called post-traumatic growth, and basically turning any pain, any experience that you've gone through, and turning it into something positive. I have gone through so many different things in my life that I never thought I was going to heal from. There was parts of my life that my parents were vile, that I was almost adopted by somebody else in the family. There was a point in my life where I felt like the darkness would never stop, that nobody cared if I was here or gone. And somehow I had that will to fight. And this was before therapy. I've never gone to therapy besides one time when I was 14. I tried to take my life at school. Again, trigger warning for you guys. And it was one of those experiences that somebody caught wind of it before anything happened. A resource officer got a hold of me, and I went to an outpatient therapy in Port Richey, I think it was. And the counselor she specialized in gambling, which didn't make sense to me why she was my counselor. It was 2 sessions of outpatient therapy, and that was it. Again, I was 14, so you got to think that was like 2006, 2007, something like that. And it just didn't really seem to matter if you had mental health struggles, and especially being a male, how stigmatized it is being a male who has mental health struggles. We're not supposed to speak out as men. We're, macho men, and we're supposed to, constantly be the provider and constantly be the backbone of every nuclear family. And, eventually all that weight and all that expectation weighs down on us, and we need the same resources. We need the same attention that everybody else can get, whether it's kids, whether it's women, that everybody else has. I'm very passionate about mental health, and being one of the few men who openly speak about mental health and not try to dismiss anybody of what they're going through. I want to be somebody who people will remember, somebody that can help others in the struggles, whatever that may be. And if this can help a couple guys that are going through something in their life, great. I hope you take something out of my podcast. I'm more than grateful for anybody who listens. And I'm even more grateful that this podcast has made it out of the country. There's so many different factors in what I do and what it's turning into that I'm grateful for. So for all the guys who do listen to my podcast, it is okay to be vulnerable. It doesn't make you any less of a man for feeling the way that you're feeling. If you lost a best friend, you lost a brother, you lost any family member, your mom, your dad, it's okay to feel what you're feeling, man. Just don't bottle it up. Male suicide is high enough. I did not want to be another statistic. I am so grateful that I was able to have somebody reach out to me and be there for me when I needed it most. And I want to be that beacon of light for those guys, those girls, those kids that listen in that darkness that they don't think they're going to get out of. And I'm very passionate about this subject, and even more so for the people who are afraid to speak out. So for those of you who listen, I'm forever grateful for you guys. And there are a couple quotes that I wanted to read to you guys. This first one is from a song called Monster Made of Memories by Citizen Soldier. I'm a cage. I'm a prison for what no one sees. Ashamed like I'm sleeping with the enemy. No one believes me, but I'm 6 feet deep. It's a monster made of memories. It's alive like a parasite inside of me. And it feeds of the trauma of what it used to be from this monster made of memories. But there's no shred of evidence because I don't bleed from this monster made of memories. Powerful stuff, guys. When I heard that song today, I was blown away. There's so many artists out there who advocate for mental health stuff, and I'm glad that I've discovered so many artists who do so. Whether it's Linkin Park when Chester was still around, whether it's From Ashes to New now, and Citizen Soldier, and the list is endless now. I'm so grateful for those guys. One more quote I wanted to read from you guys. It is from a user whose name, or an author's name, is TMT. I'm not sure who it is, but I found this on a suicide prevention page, and it reads, "The devil asked me how I knew my way around the halls of hell. I told him I did not need a map for the darkness I know so well." I was speechless reading that. I think it's something that people, you should, sit on that quote for a little bit and kind of think about it. When we're in darkness, I feel the most common thing that we do is think that we're alone and think that it's only happening to us and nobody else could go through what you're going through. And that couldn't be any further than the truth. When we're in darkness, that fight or flight kicks in and survival mode is there. And you don't have to live in survival mode for the rest of your life, guys. That healing is so possible. If there's anybody who could be an example of someone who shouldn't be here, but I'm here. There's so many things that could have broke me and I didn't let it. And I really hope that I can save just one person's life. I'm not seeking hundreds of thousands of people that I can save. If I can reach that one person and change their life or change the way that they think, great. And I just wanted to say, again, thank you guys so much for your support forever. Just always remember that you can find me on Facebook in the Mental Health Movement group. My name is Chris. You can find me on TikTok under Mental Health Pod and on Instagram. And of course, my YouTube channel, Mental Health Movement. Thank you guys for tuning in. Have a blessed weekend. And please, please always remember, be gentle with yourselves.